This is C.T. Bowen of the Tampa Bay Times. I want to thank and welcome the viewers tuning in to the Tampa Bay Chamber's 2020 Virtual Candidate Forum Series. The Tampa Bay Chamber focuses on policy, not politics. While they do not endorse, this forum serves as a means to make sure its members and the business community are informed on where candidates sit and stand, on issues that are important to businesses. Today, we're excited to have candidates for Hillsborough Board of County Commissioners District 1. And with us, I'd like to welcome Mr. Harry Cohen.
Good morning.
Jen McDonald.
Morning.
And Tony Morejon.
Good morning, Tampa, Hillsborough County.
Thank you. First question, and we'll begin with Mr. Harry Cohen. We're just 6 weeks from Election Day. Can you give us a brief, 60 seconds or less, update on your campaign, what message you want to deliver to voters in the final stretch?
Well, thank you very much. Good morning. My name is Harry Cohen. I'm very glad to be with you this morning. If you would have asked me in March what we would have been talking about in this campaign, I would have gone through a whole litany of issues related to transportation and affordable housing and workforce development, to name a few. But I think that the public health pandemic and the economic fallout from it are now the penultimate issue that is sort of overarching all of the campaigns that are going on nationwide. So I think that all of us in the final weeks of the campaign need to be talking about how we view the pandemic, how we view recovery from the pandemic, what we think about what is happening literally on a day-by-day basis, and what about our experience and background makes us equipped to help Hillsborough County move forward through what's going to be a very uncertain time.
Thank you. Jen McDonald, same question.
Hi, good morning, everybody. I am Jen McDonald. I am a local small business owner and entrepreneur, risk management and insurance professional, a local community leader, past president of my neighborhood association, just finished a term on the South Tampa Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors, chairwoman of the Business Advisory Committee at Hillsborough Community College, and vice chair of the Citizens Advisory Committee of Hillsborough County. I, like many of us, were frustrated in 2018 about the decisions being made by our elected officials. So when the Democratic Party called, I listened carefully to their call about my experience and qualifications. I contemplated what a run would look like and what running this county would look like, and then I answered their call. Turns out I am most uniquely qualified for the job as it sits today. My profession has been in risk management and insurance, assessing risk, helping business owners look at what could go wrong and how we can prevent that and what those options would result in, and then moving forward through challenging times. My job as a local business owner and entrepreneur has geared me specifically from building my small business from the ground up and working with other business owners towards moving us forward through these challenging economic times.
Thank you. Mr. Morejon, same question.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Good morning to the candidates. I've said it before, I admire everybody here. It takes courage to come forward and want to lead. The pandemic is something we'll get through. We're resilient. Years ago, we put together hurricane preparedness, the first in the nation that was bilingual, to prepare Tampa, Hillsborough County for disasters. Pandemic is the same thing. It's a disaster we have to plan for, we have to get through. I'm excited. Campaigning has changed. Our lives have changed forever. It will never be the same. I guarantee you we'll get through this. The way we do business has changed. The way we do work at the office has changed. The way politics is going to go from now on has changed. We have to be consistent, serving the people. I spent 35 years. I got that calling for public service 35 years ago. And I've enjoyed it and I loved it. 37 years ago, I apologize. I spent over 35 years doing it. And it's time to talk to people, listen to people. Let's get through this together. And we can do that. And we're doing it. I think my background, being somebody who spent 35 years on the streets of this great county, helped me do that.
Thank you. This next question will go to Jen McDonald, and then I'll go back to Mr. Cohen since they are in the same primary. The topic is jobs. How can county government use its authority and its resources to direct job growth?
Yes, so currently I'm the chairwoman of the Business Advisory Committee at Hillsborough Community College, where we build strong entrepreneurs and launch them into our community through many different avenues. One through HCC, through Operation Startup, through Strive, and we also are part of the reasoning and how Jim Moran ended up here with their second stage building program for the Jim Moran Institute. The county has been very much involved in these programs. And working with them and partnering to build strong entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs are one of our major employers here in Hillsborough County and employ a vast number of our employees. So if we continue to build strong businesses here and support those businesses in the ways that they need to be successful, they will continue to be strong employers in our community and moving us forward. On the flip side, and something I bet we'll talk about later, is transportation, and transportation can be prohibitive getting to work. So we really need to think as a county about how we offer transportation solutions that equal reliable transportation to work for all employees of our county.
Thank you. Mr. Cohen, same question. How can the county government use its authority and its resources to direct job growth?
Well, pre-pandemic, I think that a lot of the things that Jen just said are very relevant. I also think that we were beginning to really see some real partnership between the county and the city of Tampa on workforce development efforts, really directing people into educational opportunities that would put them in place for a well-paying job. I think, however, due to the economic downturn, the county is going to have to take a very, very aggressive posture when it comes to supporting local businesses and putting money into entities that employ lots of people. I will tell you flat out that if there is not another stimulus bill, it's going to be very, very hard for the county to even provide the local services that people need to depend on, like public safety and sanitation and courts and things like that. But assuming that we're able to stabilize that, we need to be putting money into our arts and cultural institutions, which employ a lot of people. We need to be building back our tourism and hospitality industry so that we can begin to collect tourist development taxes again. We need to put money into things that have been disproportionately affected by these closures. Restaurants, bars, hair salons, all these businesses that had to close, have had to operate under severe restrictions.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Morejon, same question. How can county government use its authority and resources to direct job growth?
I remember back when they started the workforce, they placed Phyllis Buzanski in charge of it. It used to be a county function that we had job developers, people who went out there to develop jobs. It was given to a nonprofit. The first nonprofit leader ran that into the ground. The second one we all know, recently in the news, also did the same thing. We need a little bit better control. Things have changed. I met a woman the other day who came from New York City. Her job is in New York City, but she chose to live here in South Tampa, working from her house. A lot of people can work from home. We have to partner better with the school system and with the educational folks to get people prepared, because jobs now are not just going to be in the big mega centers anymore. A lot of folks are going to work from home. And if you don't prepare people to work from home, they're going to be missing out. I agree with Harry about the restaurants and the bars and the service industries. They're taking a beating. If it wasn't for our construction, people out there building homes, people out there fixing homes, if it wasn't for those types of services, we would be in a major depression. The county has to partner with the chamber. The chamber should bring in the big companies, as you have done a well job bringing people here to this area. But we have to work to educate our people to be able to work those jobs as well as the jobs of the future. They're going to be from home. A lot of people are going to be working from home, no doubt about it. A lot of these buildings are figuring out, these landlords are figuring out that they don't need the space anymore, these buildings. I'm talking about the offices. They're saying, hey, I can work with half the staff here, and everybody doesn't have to be here anymore. Look at the school system. The schools are not going to be full anymore. That's just the way it is. We have to adapt. We have to get together with the city, the county, with the state. It has to be collaborative. We got to do it together, and we can do it. This board will make sure it gets done.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
New question, and I'm going to start with Mr. Morejon on this one.
Okay.
Topic is home rule. Local governments across the state have been critical of the legislature in recent years, suggesting that there is a, quote, Tallahassee knows best close quote, mentality that is threatening home rule. Do you agree that this is the case? If yes, how would you as a county commissioner work to establish a productive relationship with the legislative delegation? If no, then how do you explain some of the legislation filed in recent years that handicaps local government?
I agree. The county has a home charter rule. We're supposed to be in charge of our own. That rule puts the 7 county commissioners in charge of Hillsborough County. The state has done a number of things and pushed it upon the county. We have to have a better relationship with our state representatives and the people in Tallahassee. We need to involve the citizens to know that they have the power through the county to put the state in its place. The state has state rules. We need to go with the home rule. We need to, within our borders, decide what it is that we want, what we need. I would fight for that.
Thank you. Mr.
Thank
Cohen?
Well, this is a topic that is near and dear to my heart because over the 8 years that I served on the Tampa City Council, we found ourselves doing things here that were desired by our citizens only to have them undone in Tallahassee. And the best example is something I know Jen worked on, which was the tree ordinance, which was a consortium of neighborhood groups and builders, trade groups, and government officials who came together and worked for years to put together a tree ordinance that everyone could live with that would protect our tree canopy and at the same time protect people's property rights in terms of being able to do what they needed to do to build. And once we passed it, the legislature completely undercut our efforts and basically declared what we had done null and void. We had to go right in under the wire in imposing a ban on certain phosphates and fertilizers in the city of Tampa because the legislature was about to preempt our ability to do it. Well, that protects the community's water supply. And those are things that are very, very important for local government to be able to make those decisions for themselves. So I think that it's appalling that our legislative delegation would ever support laws that would overturn the will of the people locally.
Thank you, sir. Jen McDonald, same question.
Yes,
Home rule.
so Harry touched on many of the reasons why home rule is so important and why it's so important for our communities to have the power to govern themselves. When I first started running for this office 2 years ago, I was handed a textbook of how the powers were delineated down from the state of Florida to the counties and all the different offices within the counties and told to study it. And in understanding that our power as county commissioners were given to us by the state of Florida to enact and rule over the county in terms of how we legislate here, and understanding those powers came from the state, we understand the state also feels the obligation to pull back the powers when they think there's an overarching need. The reality is having strong relationships with our local electeds that are representing us in Tallahassee is critical in this point to fight for home rule. Over the course of the last decade, I have built strong relationships with many of our local state house reps that are in the Hillsborough County District, and I will be working very closely with them over the course of my term as county commissioner to fight to push back for home rule, explaining to them exactly why the things that they are working on and the initiatives to repeal home rule are going to negatively impact our community. Tree ordinance, phosphate ordinance, all of these things are very important to our county because of where we lie and the fact that our canopy is so critical to our ability to commute amongst ourselves via the sidewalks. So it's an important thing that we have strong relationships. Unfortunately, I've already built those relationships with our folks in Tallahassee.
Thank you. New question. Start with Mr. Cohen. The topic is transportation. There has been a lot of discussions on merging MPOs and creating a regional planning group. As you know, metropolitan planning organizations are federally mandated authority that plans transportation projects. What are your thoughts on merging our region's MPOs into a single entity? Mr. Cohen?
Well, first of all, when I was on the city council, I served on the MPO for 8 years, including as vice chair and chair of the policy committee and chair of the transportation disadvantaged coordinating board. So I do know something about the way that it's structured. I am not in favor of merging MPOs, and I will tell you why. We have 1.4 million people in this county. And if you merge the MPOs with, say, Pinellas and Pasco, you have an organization that's going to represent upwards of 3 or 4 million people. And it's very, very important that citizens, that anybody that wants to have their voice heard at the MPO be able to actually get to their representatives there. And the more people it represents, the more diluted the citizen's ability is to participate. I understand the need for the region to be speaking with one voice when it comes to going to Tallahassee and Washington for transportation projects. But that can be done through the re-strengthened TBARTA. It doesn't need to take the MPO out of the hands of the people. Hillsborough County is larger than 13 states. So to cede more of our local decision-making authority to a regional entity, I think that that's a big mistake.
Same question, Jen McDonald.
Sure. So Harry hit on the point pretty concisely there. TBARTA does the job of being the space where we should be discussing cross development planning. The reality is each MPO can't act as its own vacuum, right? If we're going to run a system on the rails and the rails that go across the upper Tampa Bay area and into Pinellas, and Pinellas decides they're not going to embark on that, that would be a problem. So do our MPOs need to communicate? Yes. Do they need to be merged into one organization? No, we already have that organization out there. We just need to make sure that the job is being done to communicate amongst each other. We have a lot of challenges facing us going forward in this county, and we need to be able to make those decisions at the county level, but we need to be heightened awareness of what our neighbors are doing and where we're actually going with our movement as we move our transportation program forward.
Thank you. Mr. Morejon.
Yeah, we just talked about home charter rule and how important it is for us to be able to rule our own destiny within our county. The MPO needs to stay as it is. We need to have that voice for citizens without it being diluted. We do need to partner with the region. We do need to continue to collaborate and talk about plans in the future. But we need our own MPO. We need our own representation local. That's what it's about. I think this census is going to show that we even have more than 1.4 million people. People want to live here, but we need to keep those decisions local.
Thank you. I'm going to stay on transportation for a second. This question goes to, and also reference the MPO. But just last week, the MPO adopted its 5-year work program and set its priority projects for the coming years. And there's a lot of discussion about whether the Tampa Bay Next should continue to be funded. That's the plan for the highway expansion of 275. Widening it down to Bears and also rebuilding the I-4 interchange. What are your thoughts on the Tampa Bay Next project?
I'm sorry, was the question thrown to me? I had a little breakup in my...
Yes, I'm sorry. The questions, okay. Do you need to repeat it?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah. So,
okay.
So road widening projects cost upwards of $120 million a mile to perform, and I don't think that's the best investment of our resources at this time. We have yet to adequately supply public transportation and mass transportation for those who can't afford to own a car. The $9,000 a year carrying cost to own and operate a vehicle in Hillsborough County, and 50% of homeowners and roughly like 40% of renters living in the at-risk, which means 30% of their income or more is going towards housing. We don't have a lot of room for margins on $9,000 carrying costs per car. So what we need to do is provide reliable transportation for all citizens, including those who are unable to afford a car, so that they can get to and from work and sustain their jobs and sustain themselves and to earn better livings. The reality with the use of the rail is, you know, if we look at what the cost, it's around $20 to $25 million per mile to secure the railway tracks that we would if we were to buy the tracks from CSX. And that would be a far more value-driven, bang for our buck-driven opportunity. And those tracks run from the university area all the way down to the tip of the South Tampa Peninsula, which means you can move people through downtown and through all of our business hubs. If you had a very good bus system running across the 275 into the West Shore area and over into the Drew Park area, you're bringing people into jobs, right, with a pretty low cost compared to what it would cost to widen that road. So do I think that's the best value for our buck? Not really. No, I don't.
Thank you. Mr. Cohen, same question.
Well, having sat through many of those hearings over the years, I can tell you that an awful lot of it is in the details of what the people up there were actually considering and what was actually part of the plan. I agree generally with what Jen just said, but I would say that one of the things that makes it very difficult right now is that we really don't know what the economy is going to look like and what commuting patterns are going to look like once the pandemic has subsided, we hope. And what I mean by that is, even if 10% of people who used to be working in the central business district are now working from home, that represents a major shift in commuting patterns across the county. I absolutely think that our number one priority going forward, both for environmental reasons and for reasons of just capacity, has to be to get cars off the road. We need to give people alternatives to a single occupancy vehicle. It might look like a train, it might look like a bus. Interesting, in New York City, for the first time in 75 years, more people are riding the bus than the subways. I think the reason has to do with the social distancing. Is that going to be something that we're going to need to take into account as we go forward? So I think that there's just an awful lot of unanswered questions right now about what our society is going to look like and our economy is going to look like in 6 months or a year. But I agree with the fundamental principle that we must reduce congestion by getting single occupancy vehicles off the road, and widening roads is not the way to do that.
Thank you. Mr. Morejon, same question. What are your thoughts?
There you go. I think the pandemic, if it goes away or not, it still has changed us. A number of people I know working from home, a great number of them are going to school their kids virtually from home. You see this already. You see this happening. We put these gazillion-dollar plans into transportation, but yet we need to focus on what's going to happen and what's happening. We're not going to have as much on the roads as we used to. That's just for sure. I like rapid transit. I like the rapid bus system. It's hard to get people to give up their cars. I ask people, are you going to give up your car? And they say no. It's hard. This is a car-oriented world for now. Downtown isn't anymore. Ybor won't be anymore. They'll build in buildings with no parking, so people will be forced. But the county's still very wide open, and people need to go from point A to point B. And sometimes it's hard to do that on a rail. So widening the roads, no, but you need to account for the traffic somehow. Look at Miami. I go to Miami to visit once in a while, and you get on traffic jam at 3 in the morning. Tampa's starting to look like that. Hillsborough County's starting to look like that. We need to come up with alternatives. And I think the rapid transit, putting the bus systems at a better pace, will work.
Thank you, sir. And
Thank
Mr.
you.
Morejon, this next question is for you.
Okay.
Okay. The county budget. A key duty of county commissioners is to construct, approve, and implement a budget. What one area of county services would you feel most needs additional resources? Or should any part of the county budget be shielded from budget cuts?
I think what needs to be shielded is public safety. Anything to do with public safety. The job of the county is to do infrastructure and provide services. We pay taxes, and for those taxes, you're supposed to get services. I worked in the county. The budget process is always interesting. When you tell department directors, okay, we need to cut the budget by a certain percentage, they always offered up the most difficult things to cut. I used to work for, I was a social worker at one time, and my old director, Jimmy Keel, who they named the library after, when it came to budget, they asked him to cut the budget, and he went to cut our unit. And all the employees started to panic. Why are you cutting us? You know, we're essential. He said, because they're not going to cut it. Luckily, we have Bonnie Wise, somebody who's very good at the numbers, somebody who's very good at the budget. We can count on her. We're going to have to ask her. We're going to have to grill her. We're going to have to be with her consistently looking at the budget as to where we can cut. Harry said it, and it's true. Anybody who knows about government knows after this pandemic, there will be cuts in services, unfortunately, cuts in the budget. It's going to happen. But where we make those cuts, can we make precision cuts? Can we look at the services that we need to provide by law? Because some of them are provided by law. We have federal laws, we have state laws, that we need to provide that service. Other services we include, we'll maybe be able to curtail them a little bit, cut down. I will not enforce any kind of cut on our public safety at all.
Thank you. Mr.
Thank
Cohen,
you.
same question.
Well, I agree with what Tony just said. And I think that what's going to be complicated about the budget process going forward is that it's going to, I think, depend a lot on where the need is. If there is a federal bailout of state and local governments, that will take care of things like public safety, sanitation, the court system, which is basically runs on fines and fees and traffic tickets, which are dwindled down to nothing. If there isn't a backstop by the federal government, let's face it, the state and the local governments cannot print money. If the money goes into the public safety realm, you're going to see it cut from non-essential services. But everybody's definition of what's essential and what's not essential is different, and that's where the rubber's going to really meet the road. I will tell you that I'm very concerned that our arts and cultural institutions have taken a very, very big hit during this pandemic, and many of them, like the Strass Center, are going to be the last to come back. And we need to make sure that the county is there to backstop these institutions so that when they're able to reopen, they're still here. The need is going to reveal itself over the next year or so, and as it does, we're going to have to make value judgments about what is important to us to preserve.
Thank you. Same question, Jen McDonald, county budget.
Yep. So the budget is it's going to be very tight. We all know that we're about to go through some economic challenges here in Hillsborough County and at the national level. We're going to have to tighten the belt. We know that roughly a third of the budget is where our wiggle room really happens, and everything else is pretty locked into fixed costs. And so we aren't going to be able to move too much of that money around. The reality is that we find ourselves in challenging positions for infrastructure because we were not collecting correct impact fees from the new residential development that's been going on in our community over the last decade. Now we've started to resolve that at County Center and been working very closely with our Builders Association to move forward on impact fees. We need to be focused on infrastructure. We need to be focused on infrastructure even through this downturn. Right now, we are not providing the services to our citizens that they expect, and that infrastructure that they need needs to be developed. That would be transportation infrastructure, that would be school building infrastructure, and those sorts of things are going to come out of either the budget. We know all for transportation still held up by the state Supreme Court. We don't know what's going to happen with that. We're not anticipating great things coming out of there. And so we need to think about how we move forward as a community, providing the opportunity for all citizens to be able to get to work, to continue to have income, and to build themselves up as citizens in our community. And that's through reliable transportation. We need to be able to provide the infrastructure and other parts of infrastructure that are needed, like schools, firehouses, and that comes out of our county budget that comes directly from impact fees. Impact fees is the cost acquired by the county, the fees acquired by the county in order to build the infrastructure needed for the new development that's coming here. And so as long as we stay tight to those impact fees and get adequate impact fees, we'll have the resources available to continue to develop those sorts of infrastructure items. And then on the other end, we can use what we have in our budget to move the other parts of infrastructure, such as transportation, forward, so we can pull ourselves out of what I expect to be a tough and challenging economy.
Thank you. Mr. Cohen, this question is for you. And the topic is equity, racial equity. Name an issue in Hillsborough County that directly impacts or is directly impacted by race and equity. And please explain how the county can incorporate an equity framework in addressing the issue.
Well, I think that if anything has been revealed over the past weeks and months since race issues really have become front and center in this country, it's that issues of equity permeate across everything. It's not just policing and law enforcement. It's transportation. It's access to clean water, to clean air. It's access to health care. It's access to a good education. It's access to fresh food. So I think the very basic services that the county provides have to be viewed, all of them, through a prism of equity. We have, for example, Mr. Morejon earlier mentioned Commissioner Phyllis Buzansky, who was a dear friend of mine, and she is the mother of the indigent healthcare tax in Hillsborough County. That is a way that we make sure that people at the lower end of our economic ladder actually have access to healthcare. So it's very important that we continue to fund those types of programs. It's very important that we continue to make sure that food is given out at schools, that as the Environmental Protection Commission, we pass laws related to clean water and clean air. Because if people are getting sick and they're not healthy, every other aspect of their life will be affected. And what we have seen lately is that across every single category, people of color are more likely, Hispanics and African Americans particularly, more likely to suffer health and other effects as a result of these inequities.
Thank you. Same question, Jen McDonald.
Yep. So we're talking about a couple things here. One, racial equity, and two, socioeconomic equity, right? And in Hillsborough County, those things tend to be aligned together in many ways, unfortunately. And so to fix the social economic situation, we need to provide access to jobs and jobs that are high quality so that everybody has the opportunity to earn a fair living. We need to provide transportation solutions, wide, unobstructed, shade tree-lined sidewalks in every neighborhood so kids can walk to school safely, so people can walk to work. We need to look at 15-minute neighborhoods in all of our urban areas. That's where all of the resources that you would need in your daily life are within a 15-minute safe walk from your home, so that those who cannot afford a car have access to grocery stores, doctors, and other resources that they need. But in addition to that, to bring true equity, to really address the equity and parity situation, we need to recognize that people of color, that are Black friends, are also high-paid executives, and they need to be highlighted by every one of our organizations. We should be seeking them for their input at every level of government, at all of our chambers, at all of our organizations, because there are successful, well-paid Black and brown people in our community, and they are not getting enough of the screen time in our community. They are not getting enough of the screen time on our news. And we need to be highlighting those who are successful, to show a path for success for other folks, and to show encouragement. And that's where racial equity is. Not all racial equity is socioeconomic equity. And we need to start revamping this conversation, because it offends me that all we talk about when we talk about racial equity is social economic equity, and it's far greater than that here in Hillsborough County.
Thank you. Mr. Morejon, same question.
I love this question. I'll talk about diversity. I mentioned Jimmy B. Keel. Jimmy Keel was the director of public assistance back when I first started. I walked along with Jimmy Keel and Porter and a number of folks, and the first Martin Luther King parade back, the first one we ever had. I was founding member of the Martin Luther King Scholarship Committee. I taught or gave a spiel about diversity at the county for new employees. Diversity isn't just white or Black. Diversity has a number of shades in it. Everybody needs to be treated equally. We founded the Hispanic Employee Council back when Larry Brown was the administrator, and we saw inequities when it came to treating Hispanics. We modeled it after Black employees. They had done a study, and we did one as well. And we worked at it. The county has administrators who are African American. They have directors who are African American. The county is a place where we need to set the level. Everybody gets to play. Fred Carl, who was my mentor, said, I'll include everybody at the table. And that's what you need. Everyone needs to be included. Everybody needs to be a part of it. When you're a part of it, people will not destroy it. I've watched it in the 30-something years that I worked there, and I watched how people were treated. I got involved in Hispanic issues because I worked in an African-American community, but Hispanic employees who, citizens who lived on the other side of the county would come see me. And I'd ask them, why'd you come see me? He said, because you treat people like people. And other places treat us like dogs. And that was true. And I took it to task. The county can always be taken to task. We always have to be vigilant of how we do things. Systematically, we need to fix it. We need to work together. Everybody should be at the same level, no problem. It has to be that way. That's the way we should live. I've always lived by the motto, treat people the way I want to be treated. People who come to my office, didn't matter if they were poor, if they were rich, whatever they were treated fairly. And the county has a policy for that. They also have a race relations. They have a diversity board. They have human relations. They have all kinds of offices where people can interact and bring things to the issue. I'm excited for the future. You know, we're going through some bad stuff, but it's not just a black or white issue. It's not just a racial issue. There's all kinds of things mixed up in what we're seeing today. And we have to work it out. The best way to work it out is talk it out. You may remember the Wilson case. Okay.
Sir, I'm sorry, we're out of time here.
No problem. No problem. Thank you.
First time we had to do that. Okay. Jen McDonald, this question is for you. And the topic is housing. Housing affordability advocates come out in strong numbers to the commission meetings, and they highlight some staggering numbers that suggest if we don't act now, we may have a housing crisis within the community. Do you think we have a housing affordability crisis? And if so, what policy measures should be in place to address it?
I think we do. I think with this economic downturn, with what we talked about earlier, and Harry mentioned, we're 5 months into a moratorium, so we are in a housing crisis. We are in a crisis before that. We were, when your income, when 30% or more of your income goes directly into your housing costs, it leaves very little to no margin available for any type of emergency situation, for a medical situation, for a car to break down, for any type of emergency that you don't have the ability to plan for when that much of your income goes into housing. And the study that came out in 2019 shows that 54, I believe, % of our homeowners and 48 or 45% of our renters are living in that sphere of 30% or more of their income being dedicated strictly towards housing. So a lot of people in this community are living on the edge, if I could be so blunt. What we need to do going forward, we need to continue to build workforce housing opportunities. We need to continue to build affordable housing. We should have mixed income housing. Studies show that mixed income housing, where affordable housing and market rate housing are intermixed into a neighborhood, into a development in the community, the neighborhood performs better than almost any other type of neighborhood in terms of success of the community, success of the students going to the schools, and equity. Also, we need to look at, we're building a lot of rental opportunities, and there are some entities here in the state of Florida that are building home ownership opportunities where they own the land and you own basically a condo on the land. And if you're a teacher, it's within your affordability as a first-year teacher. You can sell the unit later for what the cost of living increase has been, and that's the max. That's part of the built into the program. And you get to take that equity with you and move into a marketplace housing. So we need things like that to come into our market. We need people who are working across the state to look for those type of opportunities. And that's what I'm looking to bring here to Hillsborough County. More equity and more availability for people to own their first homes and to move forward through our community.
Thank you. Mr. Cohen, you get the same question. I think we have a housing affordability crisis, and if so, what policy measures should be in place to address it?
Well, certainly up until the pandemic hit, we certainly did have a housing affordability crisis. I would guess that we still do. It may look a little different once the dust settles a little bit on the current economic situation. But look, you have different problems. You have the niche of workforce housing, which is people that don't fall into the 30% category that Jen was talking about. And then you also actually have the people that need assistance in order to be able to afford any housing. I chaired Mayor Castor's affordable housing advisory team during her transition. And one of the things that we identified is that there are things that the local governments can put into their codes to make it more cost effective to build affordable housing. The first and the most important is to tie it to transit and transportation. If you have transit-oriented development and you encourage development along transit corridors, the people that move in there will have options other than the $9,000 a year that Jen was talking about to own a single occupancy vehicle. frees up money for other things. Another thing that we can do is tie density to affordable housing. If a developer wants to build a project that is more dense, they should reserve a portion of it, codified in the law, for affordable housing. And affordable housing is a defined term of art, so we know exactly what price point we're talking about. Workforce housing is a whole nother category. It's designed to make sure that people can afford housing near where they work, and we need to have some opportunity zones within the city and the county in order to provide some incentives for people to build that.
Thank you. Mr. Morejon, same question. You think
Oh,
we have?
definitely. Oh, yes, sir.
Okay.
Ask any parent who has an adult child move back in with them. We have an affordable housing crisis. I think tripling the impact fees is not going to help that either. It makes those houses even less affordable for the people who are at lower income or at even medium income. How do we do this? Let's do some mixed house zoning, or misuse. Hang on a second, tongue's getting stuck here. Mixed use zoning. Let's have businesses in the same place, job development in the same place where people live. They're going to have to put aside some for affordable housing. If it continues, the economy just continues the way it was, we'll turn into San Francisco, California, where there is none. It is a crisis, and government needs to sit down with the housing people, with the realtors, is to sit with the construction folks and figure this out as a collaborative. How can we make this happen without it being burdened on any one group?
Thank you.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Morejon, this question comes to you.
Okay.
And the topic is economic development. What do you believe is the role of the county commission in economic development?
Big time. Everybody knows, the three of us agree that small business is the backbone of America. We need to help small businesses flourish. We need to make it open. We have to open the doors for small businesses to succeed. That's where your economic development starts. Big companies, the chamber, like I said, bring them on. We'll help them as well. But the small business is where it's at. Small business employ. Talk about helping minorities. Help a minority businesses. Who do they hire? Minorities, guaranteed. This is the way we've got to do it. We've got to model it, go into the communities that need the development, assist them, make it easier for them, take some of the obstacles out of the way. I visited a restaurant once down in South Shore, and I asked what the delay was on their stuff, and it's the county. It would take the county a year to get things done. Meanwhile, the small business was suffering. We need to get rid of those obstacles. We need to work with people to make reasonable decisions where economic development can flourish. We have a good economic development team. Take the handcuffs off and let's let them loose, and let's go ahead and charge forward with economic development. I'm all for it.
Thank you. Mr. Cohen, same question.
Oh, excuse me, 1 second. Can you still see? There we go.
Yeah.
You know, I certainly agree with Tony regarding everything that he just said about small businesses. Small businesses are the backbone of our economy. I think, though, the economic development question is particularly relevant to the county commission in terms of when it offers incentives to try to bring companies in. And there's a lot of discussion as to whether or not the programs that do that are good, whether or not it's a good use of taxpayer dollar to subsidize to new businesses that are entering our community. Some people would argue they're going to come here anyway. It's been my experience, particularly going through some of these on the city council, that you're usually competing with other municipalities and counties in recruiting these businesses. So you do have to generally come up with some kind of incentive package if you want to be part of certain types of business recruitment competitions. The rule that I would impose on those types of deals is very simple. Whatever the promised deliverables are, number of jobs, number of the longevity of those jobs, how many of those jobs are above a certain salary range. Those things are quantified as part of the deal, and they have to be accountable for that in order to get whatever kind of tax abatement or incentive is structured. If they don't produce, they don't get the incentive, and you can track those things. The second thing is that when they want to come in, oftentimes they end up wanting to come into places that are completely saturated with growth already. And we've seen that in South County particularly. So we have to be very vigilant about making sure that we don't direct anything that we recruit into places that are really totally unsuitable for the type of business that they're going to be engaged in. We've seen that the stress on our infrastructure can be too high with some of these deals.
Okay, thank you, sir. Same question, Jen McDonald. What do you believe is the role of the County Commission in economic development?
So the County Commission is playing a very important role in economic development. And I can tell you from the work I've been doing with HCC and the ECC in the conjunction with Operation Startup and the various other organizations and the county support, that they are playing a very important role in helping develop, train, and build strong local entrepreneurs who will carry us out of our economic downturn. I think that there is a lot of opportunity here, and one of the things that I've started working on recently is how do we bring our cross and interdisciplinary work in our local universities and colleges to support local economic development, while also thinking about our environmental impact and what's going to happen here as sea level continues to rise. We are on the forefront of that. This district is on the forefront of that, and if we don't talk about it, I'd be remiss. So I have been working on a program to start interdisciplinary work within the universities and colleges of their entrepreneurship programs and their science and technology programs. Now, I'm at the very beginning of this work, speaking with a few close friends on how we build this out. But the reality is green technology jobs pay a lot of money. They pay very well. And it's pretty much a self-serving move to move into this arena, because the more green and clean we work, the better our business community can be, but also we're protecting ourselves from the impact of climate change. So I think that the county can really work to help foster these programs in ways reaching out to the universities, creating some non-traditional programs like we have at the ECC already, and encouraging folks to go into this arena so that we have higher paying jobs and paying jobs that are also in a place that helps protect our environment and protect our beautiful green and blue spaces. I think the county has a very pivotal role in moving economic development forward. I've been doing it for years from where I am, and I plan to bring that to the county center myself.
Thank you. I want to get this next question in, just public service. And I want to ask each of you to list your web address or whatever it is where the public can go to find out more about your campaign and your position on the issues. I'll start with you, Mr. Cohen.
Harry2020.com is my website. And people can also get in touch with me by just calling me or texting me, 813-431-9875. If you want to ask me questions about specific issues, you can also email me at hmctpa@gmail.com. I've always given my cell phone out and just asked people to give me a buzz.
Thank you. Jen McDonald?
Yeah, I don't know after my long-winded answers if anybody wants my cell phone number. But I'd love to have the conversation too. My web address is www.votejenmcdonald.com. My email address is jen@votejenmcdonald.com. And my phone number is 813-280-3417. I love to chat. I love to vet out ideas and hear what you have to say, Hillsborough County, and I really look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you. Mr. Morejon?
My turn. It's votetonymorejon.com. That's my website. You can look on there. You can do all kinds of stuff on there. You can look me up on Facebook. I have a pretty good Facebook imprint. I enjoy social media. I enjoy talking to people, hearing people's opinions. I won't defriend you if you disagree with me. That's part of life. We have to share. I look forward to it. I won't give you my cell number because then Harry will call me, and I'm just kidding. Harry, you're a brave guy.
I'm not as chatty as Jen, so I don't know if I'm going to call, but we'll see.
Okay.
I might call you, Tony.
Hey, that's fine. Either one.
Okay, let's hold it together. Okay. I skipped a question before, and I'm hoping we got time to do it, but what's the one issue that's most critical to you, and what would you do to address it if you're elected? And I'll start with Mr. Cohen on this one.
Well, it's hard to pick one issue, but I think that since we haven't talked about it a lot, Jen mentioned climate change and sea level rise. And I do think that because District 1 is the coastal district, we really are the most vulnerable to anything that will happen related to climate change and sea level rise, a bad hurricane, storm surge, flooding. That's a tremendous tremendous threat and challenge to this region. When I was on the Tampa City Council, the most important thing that I did and that I am most proud of is that I both sponsored and pushed through a stormwater and flooding program for the city of Tampa. And the fact of the matter is that I feel very strongly that the entire county needs to build out its infrastructure in the coastal areas to deal with the threats of the rising sea and the changing climate. It's very, very important. It needs to be embedded in everything we do. And, you know, Jen mentioned earlier economic development related to green industry. I think we can become a worldwide leader right here in Tampa Bay on hurricane preparedness and resilience and storm management, because we know that that is something that we are going to face. We should be the place that everyone in America comes to learn how to become more resilient and to deal with the threats of 21st century weather change.
Thank you. Jen McDonald, same question. Most critical issue?
So, county commission, county center, there's no one most critical issue. If you look at the job as a county commissioner, it's like being Charlotte standing on her web. If she starts pulling too hard on one side, she's going to snap the other side and cause distortion. So we have to really work across all fronts at all times. That being said, County Commission District 1 is usually the seat that sits on the emergency policy group, which you are seeing a lot of right now because of COVID-19. This seat is there because of hurricanes and hurricane-related issues. My career as a risk management and insurance professional, I have spent 2 decades of my life studying risk, actually over 2 decades if you count the 4 or 5 years of college where I studied risk management and insurance as well. I will bring a risk management mindset to county center that nobody else can bring because they don't have that training and background. I will bring a risk management mindset to every decision I make on the emergency policy group when I sit there because that's my background. That's how I look at things. I look at things from all angles and how any type of resolution or thing that we decide to do will possibly negatively impact another area. That's the risk management mindset. We need somebody like me who thinks about all angles when I get there. When I'm dealing with a problem, we need somebody like that on county center, and we definitely need that voice on the emergency policy group today. So I look forward to bringing my experience and my knowledge to county center to move this place forward to the best place it can be.
Thank you. Mr. Morejon, what's the most critical issue? How can you
I
address
love this question. I think public safety, you know, because housing, transportation, economic development, none of that matters if you don't feel safe. Public safety. I agree with both of them about hurricanes. I started the hurricane conferences back right after we had the 5 hurricanes crisscross Florida. I worked with Governor Jeb Bush and with FEMA to do it. It was incredible, the response. And they kept doing it for a while, and it's kind of fallen out now. People forget we live in a very dangerous zone when it comes to hurricanes. Public safety, all these issues we're seeing on the streets with some of these protests and some of these street blockages, we need leadership. It needs to stop. People need to feel safe. It doesn't stop. Harry, if you give out your cell number, I guarantee you a lot of people are going to call you and tell you that they don't feel safe. I get that every day. People are terrified. People are scared. And we need to stop that. And the first thing you have to do is feel safe. Public safety is my number one concern. Infrastructure is the second one. That's simple. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to wrap it up now. And I'm going to, excuse me. I'm going to start with you, Mr. Morejon, because you had to go last the first to go around.
Okay.
So this will be your closing statement. 1 minute to wrap it up. And if there's an issue that we didn't discuss that you want to discuss, now would be the time to do so.
Okay. I'm good with the issues. My name is Tony, and that's what most people know me by. I take a great pride in knowing that people would call me when they had an issue. You know, the guy that knows the guy that knows the guy? I was that guy. My job has always been to facilitate, to fix things legally and where people win. That's what it's about. You have to have that in county government. You have to have understanding. When I first started, I worked for the state, and I didn't like it because it was either black or white. There was no gray area. The county gave me the opportunity to operate within that gray area. What I mean by that is to be flexible, to treat people as they needed to be treated. County is all about services. We pay for it. I've argued this with all the administrations in the past, that even the poorest person pays for the services, and we need to keep that in mind when we treat people. Treat people as you want to be treated. I want to see, when we go down to the county, that even the custodians feel free to come in the office and talk to us. That's what it's about. It's about people. county commission is about people, making sure that people get the services they provide and that they feel safe. That's it for me. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Cohen.
Well, I agree with Tony. I think that it is about people and it is about making people feel safe. And certainly responding to people's needs is one of the most important jobs, particularly of a district commissioner who represents people who are getting direct services from the county. I will tell you that when I was on the Tampa City Council, I thought that one of the most important things to bring to the table is the ability to collaborate with your colleagues and to figure out a way to find the 4 votes to get done what needs to get done. Oftentimes in government, we see the extremes, we see the polarization. I think that people really want to be brought together. I think people really want to see government work again. And the federal government, the state government, they're broken, they're dysfunctional, they're not serving the people's needs. But at the county commission level, we can come together and put people first by looking to what types of coalitions we can build. When you have respect for people, when you treat people with dignity, when you let other people take credit for good ideas, when you don't try to hog the spotlight, you can forge the votes to get good things done. And that, I think, more than anything, is what I bring to complement my experience to the Hillsborough County Commission. So I would very much appreciate your vote. My name is Harry Cohen, and I would be honored to represent this community on the Hillsborough County Commission.
Thank you, sir. Jen McDonald.
Well, CT, I will say this. Leadership matters and experience matters. And if you look at what I've done over the last 4 or 5 months, my team and I was launching a campaign, getting going on knocking doors and collecting petitions, having big fundraisers, and then COVID-19 struck. And my immediate response was that of a risk management and insurance professional. I stopped. I started doing research and I reached out into the community to find experts. I was connected with Catherine Hogue-Telford, who is a local pediatrician who has 2 extra years of studying pediatric infectious disease. And I connected with her and sat down and went through the etymology of this disease and what it would mean for our community. We went live on Facebook on the 17th of March with our first video talking about what COVID-19 is, what flattening the curve means. We were disseminating information directly out into the public before the news media was ever talking about it. Leadership is showing up when the community needs you. I have showed up time and time again. We transitioned our door knocking campaign and changed it into a phone call campaign where we were calling folks to do wellness checks in the community. We called hundreds and hundreds of people across Hillsborough County to check on them, to inform them about resources, testing centers, food banks, and all the other things that they would need. This campaign has been built on the community, on serving the community, which is all I know how to do. And that will be what I bring to County Center. Leadership that gives you the information you need to make the most prepared and best decisions for your family, and decisions being made at the County Center that have been well thought out, evaluated, and vetted so that they are the best decisions for you and your family and our community to move forward into a strong and successful future. I look forward to bringing my experience, my knowledge, my leadership, and my tireless energy to County Center to work for you, Hillsborough County. I'm Jen McDonald, and I am so excited to be the next woman elected to Hillsborough County Commission.
Thank you. On behalf of the Chamber's 1,400 members and its Board of Directors, I want to thank you for joining us today and for your willingness to serve in elected office. This concludes today's forum.